So good morning. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to HR and Coffee, Prescott HR's signature morning webinar series, where we serve up quick, insightful conversations for busy business leaders and HR professionals just like you. I'm Amber Trail, and I'll be your host this morning. So whether you're joining us from the office, home, or somewhere in between, we're so glad to have you with us. HR and Coffee is all about giving you practical, real-world strategies in the time it takes to enjoy your morning cup of coffee. No fluff, just smart, actionable insights to help you lead with clarity and confidence in today's evolving workplace. So today's topic is one that hits at the core of modern leadership, which is compliance versus culture, where the real work begins. We'll be unpacking how to go beyond the check the box compliance mindset and build a culture that actually makes people want to stick around. So today you're going to walk away with a better understanding of why compliance alone isn't enough, how well-meaning policies can sometimes backfire, what really drives retention in today's workplace, and 2 quick culture wins you can implement this month. These sessions are short on time, but big on value. And after our session, we invite you to stick around an extra few minutes for our informal kind of question and answer session. It's a great chance to connect here with us today. And now I am thrilled to introduce our speaker, Kimberly Prescott, the founder and principal of Prescott HR. She is a respected, thoughtful leader in strategic HR and compliance, and she brings a wealth of experience and heart into every conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Kimberly.
Hello. Thank you, Amber. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. We are so happy that you've joined us. I hope you had your coffee. I have iced coffee this morning because it's warm today. I'm super excited about the weather. So today we are going to talk about compliance and how your compliance, while it's necessary for your organization, it's necessary to give boundaries and guardrails and set expectations and to protect you as an organization, you have to have balance between your culture. And many times people have different definitions of culture. They say, well, culture is our core values. Culture is, our mission and vision. But the reality is that culture is the personality of your organization. It's how people experience your organization. And so when you couple that or layer that with policy, you want to make sure that your policies are not draconian, that your policies are not such that people don't have the experience that they want to have in your organization. So we'll go to the next slide. We have to ask ourselves, do our policies feel like protection or do our policies feel like punishment? Again, policies are a necessary foundation. We need to have a handbook. For those of you who are on the call that are in HR, you know that the handbook is almost like our Bible in the organization. We know what page this policy is on, where it is, because we need it. But it really should be the foundation. It's to help manage risk. But we should not be managing people and definitely not defining our culture by our policies. So some of the hidden dangers are that we could be too rigid, right? And so if we have things, so I have a client who their dress code policy is very interesting. The language in the dress code policy, while the organization is a very philanthropic organization, the dress code policy feels like a 1980s bank. That's how it feels. When you read that policy, it feels very much, it's like men must wear slacks and women must wear skirts that come to this length. And it's like, okay, but when you experience this organization, that's not how they are at all. So you want that to align. You also want to be able to create opportunities for managers to manage. So sometimes you'll see policies where if something happens in an organization, the company's like, we need a policy for that. You don't need a policy for that. You don't need a policy for every instance that happens because then your handbook becomes a per se list. And when your handbook is a per se list, please know that if it's not in that list, people are going to say, well, it wasn't in that list, right? So the more you can have a philosophy and expectations, the more you allow managers to manage, and that there's the flexibility in how you can apply those policies. So we're going to ask our first poll question. And that question is, what best reflects your view of workplace compliance? From your perspective, what should workplace compliance look like? I'll give you a few seconds to answer that. There's no right or wrong answers, and it's anonymous. All right. So far, of those of you that have answered, it seems that the majority of you feel that it creates structure and fairness. Yes. And then the others of you feel that it's essential but shouldn't dominate workplace culture. Again, no right or wrong answers, right? And we just have to make sure that we're balancing those things. All right. So these are the results based on how people answered. So, what actually makes people stay, right? Because when we talk about culture, we again not wanting our policies to overrun that. People need to trust leadership, and part of the trust in leadership comes from them believing that leaders have their best interest at heart, and that the leaders do what they say they're going to do. So again, your policies reflect that, the way you write them. So it's not always about what the policy says. Sometimes it's how it's written, just the language itself. I know we do have someone from a very respected law firm on here, and I know that you fully understand how you can say things in a very lawyerly way, or you can say things in a way that reflects culture, and both of those things can accomplish the same thing. People also stay when they get a genuine connection to the organization and how they are treated when things go wrong. They also are interested in growth opportunities and a sense of purpose. All of those things can be defined by our policies and can help shape our culture in our organizations. So, another quick poll question. Um, Another quick poll question, if I can make that happen. Okay, here we go. Um, the second poll question is, what do you think is the most overlooked part in building a culture? All right, a few of you have responded. All right.
Oh, it looks like this one's gonna be close tie.
I know, I know. And there's no right or wrong answers on this either. Yeah. So, of those of you that have answered, oh yeah, it's pretty tight. Um, it looks like people listening to employees' experiences, aligning policies with values, yes, creating space for open conversations, manager behavior and accountability, absolutely. Those things are all very important. All right. So there's the answers. That's how you all answered. Um, so we want to make sure that we are consistent in how we align our culture with our policies. So we want to make sure that what's in our handbook is actually what we do. And then we also want to make sure that it aligns with our values. I'll give you another example. I have a client that is very, very focused on self care, right? Very focused on self care. They talk about it all the time, making sure that people take the time that they need. But their FMLA policy, and for the HR nerds, this will make complete sense to you, and I'll explain it. Their FMLA policy is calendar year counting back, rolling calendar year counting backwards, which means their FMLA doesn't reset until the last day of the time that they took FMLA, which does not align with their self-care philosophy. Because if their FMLA policy aligned with their self-care philosophy, their FMLA would reset at the beginning of the first time that person requested FMLA. So if I requested FMLA in April, I should reset in April. But the way their policy is written, if their FMLA ends in August, they don't reset until August, right? And so those are the types of things that you have to think about. Well, if our values and our culture say we care about self-care, our policies need to align with that. Additionally, we need to make sure that our leaders are modeling that. Leave is another great example. If leaders are not taking time off, people feel like they can't take time off. And let me tell you, Prescott HR people, y'all know I love my time off. So you know I live that philosophy for sure, right? But we want to make sure that leaders are modeling expectations. You can say that it's okay, but if you're not modeling certain things, then people don't do that. So it doesn't matter what the policy is. And then again, back to the definition of culture. How do people feel every day? So you want to make sure that your policies create and promote flexibilities and that people don't feel guilty for doing the things that you say that they can do. And we'll go to the next slide. Okay, so what are two things that you can do right now to get some quick wins for your organization? You can look at your policies and humanize one policy, make some slight tweaks. After COVID, are you still wearing suits? If not, change your dress code. Say it's okay to wear that three-quarter zip. Say it's okay to wear, Dockers or chinos instead of suit pants. Make that change so that people know that it's okay, that it's not, I'm just kind of getting away with it until somebody says something. No, it's really okay, right? Another thing that you can do is coach your managers, making sure that they're on board. Because listen, it comes from the top down. People feel it based on how the managers are enforcing or communicating those policies. So, those are two things that you can do today to help get some culture wins in your organization. So, before we get to the conversation piece, what are some things that you can do to close the gap between compliance and culture? You can identify disconnects between policy and daily experiences, and we talked about a few of those. You can engage people in honest conversations about what's working so that as you're thinking about some tweaks that you can make to your policies, because sometimes we don't know because we're not always the ones experiencing it, have those conversations and make sure that people feel it's safe to have those conversations. Make those adjustments to those policies and then track engagement and retention. So exit interviews, and I think we talked about that in our last HR and coffee to see how those things are working. And we talked in our last one about the cost. People leaving, people leave because of how they feel. And a lot of times, policy and culture has something to do with that. So there's a real cost to the way that people feel and why they leave organizations. And we want to make sure, oh, this one's cut off. Sorry about that. We want to make sure that we are building a culture and a place where people don't want to leave. So we want to create a thriving culture. We want to have authentic leadership and meaningful compliance, not just policies for the sake of policies, but policies that protect and empower. And we want to think about compliance as a foundation. Oh, there, thank you. It's there. That was my screen. We want to think of policy as a foundation, but it's the culture that builds the skyscraper of engagement and innovation. So we're going to do our last poll question, and then we're going to get to our conversation. All right. So our last poll is who owns culture in your organization? Who do you think should own culture? I can tell you, I already like this group because there's one answer that I did not want to see, and I love it. I love it because I don't see it yet. Awesome. Yeah, a lot of times I think leaders think that HR should own culture, but the reality is that that's not true. HR should not own culture, right? So yes, everyone has responsibility for culture, and leadership definitely needs to model and create the space to have a culture where people feel comfortable. So yes, so it seems that the majority of people think that everyone should own the culture, and yes, everyone does have responsibility for that. So now we're going to take the time, and I'm going to unmute people or let you unmute yourselves so that you can participate in the conversation. What are some things that you are doing in your organization? Um, to align your policies with your culture. And feel free to unmute and participate.
And if you'd like to put it in the chat, I'm happy to
Yes.
read it out of the chat too.
Yes.
I can start. My name is Alia. I work in federal HR and I'm an engagement manager in my organization. Kind of piggybacking off that last poll question, one of the things that I think usually happens is that people assume, that engagement and culture is top down, but we've tried to meet it like with a bottom up approach as well. So we created this employee engagement network, which is kind of like an employee resource group, but it's for everyone. It's no specific group of people, and it actually is encompassed. A lot of ERG members have joined this group just as a cohesive place where they can all get together. And we try to match, what leadership is doing with a bottom up approach, and that's been really effective. And aside from like our employee viewpoint survey that happens annually, it allows for a lot of like qualitative feedback throughout the year instead of just like that one pulse checkpoint. So that's been, like I said, really effective in my organization, and kind of, I don't know if it's unconventional, but kind of a different approach to it, to meet in the middle.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Rochelle?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm a director of HR for a federally qualified healthcare center located in Baltimore, Maryland, Baltimore City to be exact. And I've been with the organization for 5 years. And during my tenure here, we've done a lot of work in making sure we uphold our core values in everything that we do. So the culture build in the organization is built around and through in every practice, from policy and procedure through recruitment, onboarding, offboarding, benefits, salaries, staff surveys, also the expectations of how our staff interact with their clients and patients are built on our core values. And I got to look at them, which I should know them by heart, but their dignity, authenticity, hope, balance, passion, and justice. So, yeah, I would say our culture, you could see it differently throughout the organization, but from the HR function itself, in my practice and under my leadership, we ensure that our job descriptions, for example, our performance evaluations start from, our approach to expectations related to the core values. And then we've built out, our racial equity inclusion initiatives around that. Since we have such an approach to doing work that's trauma informed, we ensure that the core values also is aligned with that. So I believe that for anyone external and internal, they can see that from a culture build and continuity related to culture, that we are always starting from the basis of our core values. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So how, as we think about being in organizations, how do we ensure that, our leaders and managers enforce, or we as leaders and managers enforce compliance without eroding trust or morale? Because that's just always the balance that we're trying to create. We want people to feel comfortable, coming to us, talking to us, or we want to feel like we can create the boundaries that we need to create using our policies without people feeling that they, can't trust us. So what are we doing and how do we do that?
Um, Kimberly, if you don't mind, I'm Linda Ostovitz. I'm an attorney with Alfred Kerman, and I spent 3 years in executive management of my firm, which is a law firm with 280 lawyers, 500 employees total, 19 offices in 10 states. So I say that to you as sort of setting the background for my comment here, and that is that all of everything that you have said really goes together. In order to really be effective, you need people who trust your leadership. And I was leadership, the highest level of management. And I could not sit in an office and say, here's our policies and here's how people should behave and what should occur. To me, or my method of doing that was to be out and on the road and in the offices and establishing relationships, so that if somebody wanted to talk to me and tell me something, it wasn't a big deal. Oh my gosh, I've got to talk to Linda, and I've never talked to somebody on the management committee before. Instead, every single place I went on the road constantly was a stop at every single office to just say hello. How's the family? To establish a relationship. And it's interesting to me how much information I got on an informal basis by doing that. And the other thing, Kim, you talked about is, what you want people to do, you do have to model. And I also think there's a challenge of when you're running an organization or providing services for an organization that's got significantly different levels of employees. And I mean, I have lawyers who have hourly requirements to meet, who have to be to court, who work 24/7 sometimes. I've got administrative staff who is in the office, who works from 8:30 to 4:30, and there's a whole lot of perception issues to deal with. Wait a minute, why is it fair that the lawyer is not in the office and I am? Well, he's been working all night long on a brief. And so I think this is a tough, tough thing to do that we're talking about. The industry that you folks are in is very challenging, but I guess I want to confirm or affirm, if you will, that you can't just one day decide to lead. It's a process. You've got to be a servant leader. You've got to be in there with your people, helping them and, establishing the trust scenario. So you can have a wonderful document that talks about your policies and so forth, but it's meaningless unless you've got the people who are responsible for it. And I do think that's leadership. Everybody contributes, but there's got to be a relationship. So forgive me for being so long-winded, but I think that's the bottom line. There's got to be a relationship for all this to work. And thank you all for your expert thoughts on all of this.
Oh, thank you for sharing. I think that it is important, and you brought up one point that I think for us is always a challenge as leaders and HR professionals is when you have different groups of people who have different responsibilities. There are some people, person who sits at the front desk and answers the phone, they have they have to have that schedule. They have to be there versus someone who can have more flexibility and being able to communicate that in a
Mhm.
way that doesn't demoralize this person or make them feel like they're less than or their role is less important. It's more about what is required of this position, and there is flexibility in your role, but it looks different. I think that having those conversations and helping people understand that is helpful too. So we have another minute before we have to go. Does anyone else have anything that they would like to share before we end this morning? Thoughts, feedback, kind of coffee are you drinking? Everyone's quiet. We have like 3 people who've been talking. Just one more person, just jump in and say hello.
Kimberly, hi everyone. Good
Morning.
morning.
Hi.
I was late, but I did come in on the tail end of policy aligning with leave, and I do know how important that is as a leave specialist. So, thank you for that. Part of what I try to do is give the employee all of the resources available to them if they do come up against that FML non-qualifying period, because we do manage FML in the way you discussed, the kind of look back, and we're not calendar year, but we're rolling 12-month, but so.
Yes, yes, and those things definitely make a difference. Well, thank you all for joining us this morning. We definitely appreciate it. Hopefully you heard something that resonated with you. You'll be able to walk away and do something, take an action, whether it's review a policy, make an adjustment to a policy, have a conversation with a manager, whatever that might be. We definitely appreciate that. And yes, the recording will be available on our YouTube channel. So it's youtube.com/Prescott HR. And we'll also send a follow-up with the link to you, as well as a handout. The handout will be an overview of this presentation, along with a checklist that you can use to look at your policies and see how they align with your culture. So we definitely appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning. And we will have an email coming out soon with our topic for our July HR and coffee. But in the meantime, enjoy the weather, enjoy your coffee, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
All
Bye-bye.
right, bye.